Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mr. Beard. Today I found out that scientists basically came up with this idea that the T-Rex might have actually been bigger than it actually was. It blows my mind, right? Because the T-Rex was a very big dinosaur back in the day. He was basically the apex predator of its times, around living alongside the Triceratops and the Dakotaraptor and all of those cool guys. Well, the T-Rex right now, the biggest exemplary we have is basically Scotty, which weighs at something 8.8 tons. That's a big fella, if you ask me. Well, scientists came up with this thought experiment that the T-Rex might actually have been bigger than they actually estimated. To start off, there were approximately 2.5 billion T-Rexes roaming around Earth back in the day before the asteroid hit. And scientists uncovered, I think, 32 adult fossils of the T-Rex right now. That is 0.000000128% of all the specimens that lived on Earth. That's very little if you ask me. Just 32 fossils out of like 2.5 billion T-Rexes that roam the Earth. That's very little to, if you ask me. But it's very hard to find fossils. I think a T-Rex fossil is very hard to find, extremely rare actually, so everybody's happy when we find one. Thankfully we found one, so we might not even have found one out of those 32, so let's just be grateful we found 32. Scientists basically recently, they came up with this thought experiment that what if the T-Rex actually grew bigger than they say? So in order to find out how much bigger the T-Rex might have gotten, they came up with two variants. If the T-Rex had sexual dimorphism and if the T-Rex did not have sexual dimorphism. If you don't know what sexual dimorphism is, I have a picture right here on the screen. Basically, the male of a species looks different than the female of a species and vice versa. Basically, that's sexual dimorphism. You know, the male grows bigger or more colorful, or the female grows bigger or more colorful, stuff like that. So they got the first thing. Let's say the T-Rex had sexual dimorphism, scientists said. Well, they came up with that the largest adult T-Rex might have gotten up to 24,000 kilograms. And they were like, you know what, I don't think this is actually accurate, because if this were the case, we would have found more fossils that are bigger than the ones we found. So they actually scrapped this idea, so they went with the idea that the T-Rex did not have sexual dimorphism. And they came up with the heaviest T-Rex might have been 15 tons compared to Scotty, which is 8.8 tons, which is almost double in size than what Scotty is. Here's an image on the screen. An artist imagined how bigger the T-Rex might have been compared to Scotty. So this is actually an interesting thought experiment, because even nowadays on Earth, there's species that get way bigger than the average. If we look at the saltwater crocodile that lives in Australia, we might see that the average saltwater crocodile gets up to 5 meters in length, which is very big, like almost 3 times as longer than me. And to understand this experiment, the biggest saltwater crocodile that actually lived and was found was actually 6.2 meters in length. That's 1.2 meters bigger and longer than the average of the saltwater crocodile. Now, this is basically the idea that the scientists had and went with when they decided to make this thought experiment to find out if the T-Rex was actually could get like bigger than the actual fossils we have right now. In my opinion, if you ask me, sure, why not? I mean, for example, even if you look at the humans like us, like I am 1.85 meters tall. There's people out there who are 2 meters. There's people out there who are even taller than that. So if in a million years from now somebody finds a fossil of a human that's like 2.5 meters, that doesn't mean the humans were 2.5 meters. Or if somebody finds a 1.6 meter tall human, that doesn't mean the humans couldn't get bigger or smaller. Right now, what we have, the 32 fossils we found of the T-Rex actually are the average, like some more bigger, some more smaller, and the average is there. But Scotty was the biggest at 8.8 tons, which is like the biggest fossil we have of a T-Rex. Everybody assumed, oh, that's the biggest, that's how big they can can get. But actually, it's not really the case, right? Because again, if you take the example of the saltwater crocodile, the average in length is 5 meters. And if we find, let's say we find a fossil of a saltwater crocodile that's like 5.5 meters, we can say that's the biggest fossil we found, but we cannot say that's how big they can get. Because the more you live, the more you eat as an animal, as a T-Rex, as a saltwater crocodile, the bigger you get. So of course, this thought experiment that the T-Rex can get up to 15 tons, not 8.8 tons, it's possible, but very, 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 very rare, right? Because the average is around 8-9 tons. And to get to 15 tons, that means that one T-Rex could have lived very good, could have hunted very good, didn't really fight that much. So basically, it thrived in its environment, didn't really have any worries in life. That one T-Rex, it's like saying one human in a city of 100,000 humans lives very good and very, enough to thrive and get taller and more muscular and stuff. But that doesn't mean the other 100,000 people that live in the city could get to that size of that one human that lives in that city. That's just one special case. So basically, that's what this experiment does, is to imagine if a T-Rex could, like, realistically eat good, live good, thrive in its environment, basically it could get, theoretically, to that size, like almost twice the size of Scotty, the biggest Rex we have. So basically that's the experiment they had. It's like a thought experiment. They basically sat down and were like, I think the T-Rex could be way bigger. And his friend was like, what do you mean, bro? And he slapped him. Explain to me. And, that's basically how friends conversation starts. It's basically a friendly discussion between scientists that's probably turned into a whole experiment, to be honest with you. It would be cool to imagine a Rex that's almost twice as big as the biggest fossil we have, but you have to remember that's a special case. It doesn't mean they get that big. It doesn't mean that they were that big. A lot of them probably died at like 8 to 9 tons when they reached like elder stage, like when they were old dinosaurs, like my time has come. They probably died at 8 or 9 tons if lucky, right? Because back then, even now, animals have it tough. A lot of animals just die when they're young because of predation and other predators. And to get that big, it's very special. And I'm sure there was a Rex. I mean, between 2.5 billion living T-Rexes that lived on Earth, one of them at least got to that height and size, right? 15 tons, basically like heavier than a school bus by a lot, by 3 tons, I think, or something like that. Interesting experiment, in my opinion. They got very big, and just don't go around telling people that Rexes got to 15 tons, because that's not really the case. They could get to that size, but in very special occasions, if the right attributes are at play, really. Because the bigger you get, the easier it is to survive. Again, saltwater crocodiles, it's very hard to reach adult as a crocodile. There's a lot of predators out there who fight with you, even other saltwater crocodiles who fight amongst each other for survival, for food, for territory. And the T-Rex, I'm sure he didn't have it easy. I mean, it's the biggest thing that ever grew in that area. So other animals that lived, other dinosaurs that lived in that area, basically, no, they saw Rex, they killed it, basically. Because that's what animals do. You don't want to let something can get very up and basically kill your entire species for dinner. You don't want it to leave it be, right? So if a Rex got that big, even if it reached, let's say, the specimen that got to 15 tons basically got to 8-9 tons by the time it was an adult or a young adult. So by the time it was old, it got to 15 tons. And by that time, probably it got killed by its own weight, because the more bigger you get, your bones and muscles can't really function that well, to be honest, because they're not made to go up to 15 tons. It was probably very slow, very fat, very big, but it got there because it got bigger very fast, and there weren't really that many predators around them. He probably was living alone somewhere, and it just got bigger and bigger because food, plenty of food, no competition in the area. So yeah, that's it. That's an interesting thought experiment they had, and I wanted to share it with you fellas on the internet. In my opinion, I think if the T-Rex got that big, it would be very cool, in my opinion, to actually discover a fossil that's 15 tons and put it next in a museum. I think Scotty is in a museum right now, the bones of the dinosaur, the biggest T-Rex. To put a 15-ton T-Rex next to that Scotty, it will just make Scotty look like a teenager compared to that one. But again, that's a very special case, and people need to remember this is a thought experiment. It's not really based on fossil founds or research. They just basically thought about this. What do you guys think? Do you think the Rexes, more of them got to 15 tons, or were there like special cases where there weren't very much competition, no much fights, plenty of food that helped them get that big? A lot of them, even if they got to 10 tons, that's even bigger than Scotty. 10 tons is even bigger than Scotty is. Scotty is 8.8 tons. But in reality, probably the Rex was like even 6 tons, 7 tons, not even 8 tons. Scotty is a special case. But again, there could be way bigger ones out there. There could be even smaller ones as adults back then. For example, a Rex could be like 4 tons by the time it's adult if it didn't really have a lot of food to grow on and stuff. So yeah, a lot of special things in nature, right? And yeah, T-Rex being bigger. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Bye bye.